Unless you've been living in a cave for the past couple of years, and if you have, honestly, you should go back and wait like 20 more years or something. It's hard not to notice the rise of AI almost everywhere and in every field. It's almost impossible to go on any social media platform without having at least something that's even tangentially related to AI. And with it also comes a seemingly endless stream of incredibly stupid AI startups. And if you're still on Twitter, first, God bless you for sticking on this nightmare of a platform. But most importantly, it's impossible to scroll for more than 10 tweets without seeing some dumb blue checkmark AI founder drops a post about how his AI startup has $100 million ARR and $1 billion valuation. From an outsider perspective, it seems almost insane. How is there seemingly no end to the amount of startups related to AI, and yet it's pretty likely that you and your friends only use ChatGPT? Who is using these goddamn AI apps, and is there no end to the amount of money venture capital firms are willing to burn on the sacred altar of AGI within the next 5 years? But an even crazier turn of events. Are any of these companies even making any money? Who's actually earning the most of these ridiculous figures? Let's take a closer look at the very real business of AI grifting.
If something goes wrong, I would say like somehow it's that we build legitimate superintelligence and it doesn't make the world much better. It doesn't change things as much as it sounds like it should.
How would that
Which
happen?
seems like a crazy thing to say.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know if I...
First, before we go further, I need to set some definition. You probably heard the term private equity before. It's been a little bit of a media buzz in recent times, and it's used to basically mean anything at this point. So let me just clarify what it is. Private equity means the act of investing money in a company that is not publicly traded. Put simply, this means you invest money to acquire a share of a company that is not traded on any public stock exchange. Private equity tends to be a very risky business. The main reason is that unlike a publicly traded company like Apple, you can't offload your position on the market almost instantly if things go bad. Now, in our case, we're dealing with a special case of private equity known as venture capital. Venture capital is a type of private equity that focuses on investing in young startups in the early stages. Much like your local businesses, these startup shares aren't traded on public stock exchanges, which, on top of the hurdle of selling your shares, impose another big risk, is the startup can simply crash and burn before it makes any money. However, the reward for investing in the right startup can be expressed in 9 to even 10 figures numbers. I'll let you guess how much money you made if you were an early investor in Apple. These VC funds can represent a lot of different actors in the market: pension funds, banks, wealthy investors, and so on. To put it simply, they have a lot of money to throw around and they are very, very greedy. So now you're caught up with what a VC is, but why is it important to know? I think it would be foolish at this point to not admit that we are in the middle of a giant AI bubble. Everyone is trying to figure out how to best monetize this new technology, and of course, these VC firms are on the ground floor right with the startup in trying to figure it out. So on one side, we have a lot of startup founders who wants to become the next Steve Jobs, and on the other, we have businessmen with massive amount of FOMO throwing billions at any company that can even remotely ties its activities with AIs. Now, there's a little bit of a technical problem. In order to run an AI, you need a lot of underground hardware, and I really mean like a lot. Like Google-sized data centers with tens of thousands of GPUs running to train a model like ChatGPT-4. So how are these AI startups actually running the AI? If you watch a show called Silicon Valley, it's basically the plotline of the seafood app except for real. If you haven't, here's a brief summary of what's happening. Because AI is so expensive to make, only a few companies in the world have access to both the data and the hardware to make it a reality. Companies like Google, Microsoft, OpenAI, and Anthropic are what's called model providers. This means for most AI startups, they are clients of these companies. Let's take Lovable as an example, another bright AI startup. Lovable claimed that they are faster than OpenAI, Cursor, and basically every other AI company out there, and they deliver the perfect tool to replace quite literally your entire software engineering staff. Lovable built their business using what's called an API. Basically, they pay for the right to run a prompt on a model. This service is sold by one of the big four. They were using an OpenAI model at first, but then they switched to the newest version of Claude. And this is where the scam begins. A common abbreviation you will see in this circle is called ARR. Annual Recurring Revenue. This can be summarized as how much money your company made in a year. ARR is used by startups to convince investors and VCs. It's usually used to correlate growth by comparing it year over year and can be used as an argument to raise more money. Now, like any statistics, it can be cheated by having a liberal interpretation. The common type of misdirection using this is to act as a middleman to another service. For example, Claude AI. You take customers' orders and you route them to that company. Then you claim the whole volume of the transaction as revenue. After all, they paid you $20 to access your service, so you technically gain $20. Where this becomes misleading is that the only way your company product can work is by being dependent on another company product. If you charge your user $20 and it costs you $17 on average to pay for the usage of Claude, really, you made $3, but on your ARR, you can claim $20 because that's what you got paid. The biggest problem here is that Lovable doesn't provide anything that Claude does not provide. It claims to be an agentic AI, which just means you can connect the AI to different services, but Anthropic already sells a similar service. The reason why the model providers accept the existence of these middlemen is quite simple. Right now, most of them have not been able to reach worldwide adoption, so there's not enough people paying for the premium version of their models. But these startups are basically doing their job. By getting as many users as possible, when a critical mass is reached, the model provider can simply shut the access off or hike the rate so high they can possibly ask their customer to pay that much. There's a website called AI Graveyard. The common theme you'll notice after a few minutes of scrolling is that all these dead companies basically died instantly when the model provider started offering the same service for better and cheaper. So most of these startups are basically middlemen for these companies. They take VC money with the promise of capturing enormous markets and 100x their investment while shoveling billions of dollars upward to the real model providers, hoping that they figure out how to actually improve the model. Even if these startups own the models, you need a ridiculous amount of data to even train it, which, by definition, as a company that just started existing, you won't have. So you either have to buy it or start collecting. And this could take you quite literally years, assuming the task you want to apply AI to is even possible. But what if I told you there's another actor that's making even more money? See, a lot of people have been talking about the GPU gold rush, about how NVIDIA is insanely valuable right now. But if you remember, to train these massive models, you need a lot of hardware. Massive data center dedicated almost solely to give you computing power. Enter the business of cloud computing. See, while these model providers are making a lot of money siphoning the money of startups, they themselves are not the puppet master. In order to train the model, they need those data centers. And can you guess what couple of tech giants own these massive data centers that the model provider need to train the model? If you guessed the big G, congrats, you were right. You probably heard the expression, when there's a gold rush, sell shovels. And in most of the financial sphere right now, it's common knowledge that NVIDIA has sort of been a shovel seller in this AI arm race. But let's not forget that when you need to buy NVIDIA GPUs to run your data center, someone else is paying for the privilege of using them. Google is big enough to be both a model provider, but also the one selling all the computing power required to train the AIs. In fact, 3 days ago, Google signed a partnership with OpenAI to sell their computing power, letting OpenAI use Google Cloud to train their next models. And while it's true they are spending a large amount of money expanding their cloud infrastructure, they are also reporting large growth that they themselves attribute to this AI gold rush. Google Cloud is reporting a staggering 32% increase in revenue, with the CEO of Google saying, and I quote, "In the first half of 2025, we signed the same number of deals over $1 billion that we did in all of 2024. These cloud computing companies are basically at the receiving end of this chain I've just shown you. VC fund flows into startup, to model providers, to the pockets of Google, like clockwork. And then Google has to buy more NVIDIA GPUs, of course. And I guess this is where we depart from the factual and a little bit from my personal opinion, but I think that eventually they're bound to hit a wall. I mean, how many GPUs do you actually need to answer the market demand of these companies? I think Google is going to be the one walking away from this AI arms race with a strong share of the profits. Once all said and done, only these massive tech conglomerates have the money and the infrastructure required to deploy AI. Without the backing of a large entity like those, any startup is basically doomed to fail if they can't improve the underlying model in a meaningful way. Now, while there is a lot of doomed startups out there, there are also more legitimate companies with an actual plan trying their best, but they basically come back around to just skipping the model providers and funneling the money directly to cloud providers. There is also probably a comment to make somewhere about the fact that the VC funding model has been broken for a while, and most startups aren't even trying to innovate but are actually looking for buyouts. But I think it's beyond the scope of this video. Unless OpenAI actually achieves AGI, which is looking more doubtful every day, as the American economy eventually enters a recession, the VC funds will dry up and those startups will disappear like sand in the wind. But Google will still have pocketed all of their money. And let's face it, if there's a company that actually has any usage for these data centers, it's probably either them or Amazon. Anyway, now you know how to be an AI grifter. Just put a wrapper over any of the current top models, pretend you are being #disruptive and creating a completely new form of AI. and then just watch the money roll in. Just, you know, don't forget to burn like a couple billions in service fees and GPU compute. At least pretend like you tried. Enjoy the retirement!